everyone, it's Pete here. So in this video we're going to have a look at my Tamiya FAV 1984 and compare it with this Tamiya FAV from 2011 and have a look at some of the differences, and then I'm going to take this one for a bit of a run and see how it goes. So this one, I'm pretty sure I bought this in 1984 when I was just on the cusp of manhood, and it's the last Tamiya that I bought before I restarted the hobby when I was about 40 something. And yeah, this was a really good buggy, and this is well used. You can see at the back there I've mended the frame there because I did so many wheelies that I wore them out, and yeah, I did give this a bit of a beating. So when I got back into the hobby in 2012, I think it was, I did get this running again, and unfortunately I didn't take any footage because I wasn't doing YouTube at that point. But this one did run really well, but I think the plastic's gone a bit brittle. I don't know if you can see, there's a little break there. That's where the suspension pivot attaches to the chassis, and I super glued that. But since then, this has been a shelf queen, so it hasn't got electronics in it anymore, so it's just an ornament. I always thought it would be good to get another one, the re-release, when that came out, and unfortunately I missed it when it was out as a kit. So recently I've bought this 2011 re-release. I got it from Derek at Holly Hill RC, and he got this secondhand, so he hasn't built this, he's bought this from somebody who did build it, and it's got a few little extra bits on this which we'll have a look at. So the main thing that made me want to buy this from Derek was the shocks on this, which are from a Wild one. These are oil shocks, whereas the original had sort of pogo stick springs which are very bouncy. So the shocks on the front are pretty good, but the ones on the back are still bouncy, so I need to have a look at that. I did check the oil and there is oil in these, but they don't seem very well damped. It's quite a short little spring on the back there because the spring doesn't go over the shock like normal. It's sort of just at the bottom there, maybe do with a softer spring. I'll check the oil and see if thicker oil will help it a little bit. So on the back here somebody sort of put a little engine. I don't know if that's like a 3D printed one, but that looks pretty cool, doesn't it? So there's an exhaust on the back. This bit's broken off, so I might just glue that back on. I mean, it's just one of those things that is going to break off in use, I think. So they put this little fire extinguisher on the back here, which I'm pretty sure is the one from the Wild Willie, and this little camouflage net. So it's got some pretty cool little scale details. And notice they put the lights on the outside of the frame there because I guess the exhaust pipe was in the way of that light being in there. Another little customization they've done is to put a roof on this because it just comes like that as standard. I think it's a bit of metal plate. So something I noticed, there's some gluey residue on the bonnet here, and Derek said there used to be a sticker on it which he didn't like, so he's peeled the sticker off, but I don't know if you can see there's a bit of sort of gluey residue, and I've been trying to get it off with some spirit, but then I started taking the paint off, so I might have to repaint this at some point, but that'll be alright for now. So they did a nice job on the driver here. Now on the original, all the plastic was in this sort of beigey sandy colour, and I've left that unpainted because I thought it would get scuffed up, and included these roll bars. And so because I've done this in the green, I needed to paint these, and originally I painted them in Tamiya acrylic paint, the same as this, but it all flaked off this because it's sort of a bendy type of plastic. So in the end what I did is repainted it with the sort of Humbrol paint, and that sticks much better to this stuff. So on the re-release I noticed they've moulded these parts in black plastic, which is better really because you can just leave them black and you don't have to worry about the paint coming off. Just have a look at the undamped suspension. Yeah, it was quite a bouncy car, this. So one thing they did on the re-release that I didn't like is they put that hole in the side there of the battery compartment. So you had the battery wire coming out of there and then the ESC wire coming out of there, and you connected it outside the car. And I never liked to see the wires. So on the original, you can see that's like that, and you sort of connected it inside the battery tray. So I haven't got any electronics in here, but I just think I just made a bigger hole there so I could fit the plug through. And you could easily connect it inside, and so you didn't have the ugly wires on the outside. So you can see it's the same on the re-release. I just need to make a little hole in there, and I can connect the battery on the inside here. So looking at this, I don't think it's been run very much. Derek's only run it for the video that he did, and I think the previous owner hasn't run it very much by the look of the underside. Notice there's a little hole there. That's because there were some fuel cans on there, but Derek's used those on one of his other RCs. So you can see the paint's coming off the wheels there, revealing the sandy colour plastic underneath. It's always a bit of a problem painting wheels because they do get sort of scuffed up, so I'll have to look into that. On my old one, what I ended up doing was using Rough Rider wheels, which are already moulded in sort of grey plastic, and I've painted them sort of gunmetal colour over the top, but if that scrapes off, then the plastic underneath is a pretty similar colour. So Derek was saying there's an ESC in here for brushed motors and NIMH batteries. There's no receiver, so I better add one of those, so let's have a look inside. So you can see, taking the bonnet off you can get to the servo, but the ESC is under there, so you need to take out the driver plate as well. So So I was noticing with the battery compartment there is a gap there that you could feed the wire down into. So I've got no idea what type of ESC this is. Now I've got this proper branded hobby wing one, so I might use this because you can use LiPo batteries with this one. There's a reasonable bit of space now with modern electronics. I remember with the original one with the manual speed controller in there, and obviously you've got another servo working it there, and you've got a great big receiver in there, and also you had to have your receiver batteries in the back there. So yeah, much easier with the modern electronics. Right, so I've been doing a bit of tinkerage off camera, and the first thing I was trying to do is get the shocks to be better. There didn't seem to be enough damping, and something I found, these little piston ends here are absolutely knackered. They're barely round, well they're not round, and they weren't fitting in the cylinders very well at all. They were sort of rattling about. So I put some standard Tamiya ones. These shocks actually come with a different sort of thicker one of these. These aren't the proper ones either, but these ones are put in a better. I've put in 1000 CST oil, which is about 80 weights, and it is better. It's not brilliant, but anyway, that is better than it was. So you might notice he hasn't got his arm, so while I was unscrewing all this, I've knocked his arm off. And one problem with these driver arms is that there's not much contact between the arm and the body because it's hollow. So what I've done is put some filler in there, and then I'll have more to glue to. And what I might also do is, like I did with my Wild Willy, was to drill through from the inside of the body and put a screw through into the arm. Now I've filled it, so hopefully that will stay on a bit better. To show you what I've done with the battery. So I'm using this shorty LiPo, and the wire sort of tuck into that sort of bit there. That's where the hump would have gone with the hump pack Tamiya battery, and that seems to sort of fit okay until the wires are tucked away and you can't see them on the outside of the car. So initially I had planned to use this one, this sort of rounded LiPo here, but I was having great difficulty sort of getting the wires around. It's a really tight fitting to get the wires around and get them hidden. So this battery compartment was originally designed for a sort of rounded battery, so I've had to just Dremel away these little bits here. So you see no ugly wires coming out of there, and the only wire you can see really is that little one down to the motor, and I can live with that. Okay, so I've stuck his arm back on, and I've stuck the exhaust pipe back on, so I think it's time for a test drive. So I gave it a little test drive in the garden, and his arm fell off again, and the exhaust pipe fell off again, so I'm leaving that off because there's only a tiny area to glue it onto, so I'm not going to bother with that. And with his arm, what I've done is what I was talking about with drilling through from the inside into that filler in his arm. You can just see the end of the screw there on his arm, so that's not going anywhere. So now it's time for a proper test drive in the New Forest. Okay, so as you can see, the test drive went really well. I forgot to say that I put the Rough Rider wheels on this from the other one because of the missing paint on those, but we'll get those other ones repainted and put them back. So the only problems I had really were this engine was sort of wobbling about. I think it's only attached by a little tiny tab here, and so there's not much attaching that. I'm not sure what I can do about that. I might just remove the remaining part of the exhaust and put the lights back on the inside, because they get knocked easily on the outside there and sort of twist around. So apart from that, I'm still not entirely happy with the back suspension, so I might just try and do something with these. Right, some off-screen tinkering has been happening, and check it out, I've cracked it. So what I did, I found some axial piston ends in the spares, and they fit exactly in this, and they're thick like the ones that are supposed to go with this. So now it works perfectly, and I've gone down to 600 CST oil, because now the piston actually fits. It provides a good bit of damping. I also had a look at changing this shock, so I had the spring on the outside because I had some spare bits and bobs. I couldn't find a spring that was quite exactly the right size. I needed a slightly narrower one, but it is possible. I've left it with the kit spring, which seems to be working well now the damping works. So the job's good, and I think we'll call it a day with that one. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.